Reporting from Arkham Asylum once again, this is Mr. Rogues. So, the Superman movie is out, and with it a new cinematic DC universe. In this video I'll be going through my thoughts on the movie, and it will be full of spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, then I suggest you don't watch this video until you have. Now, this movie had a lot of pressure on it to be good, and there's two main things it needed to accomplish. First, it needed to be a good Superman movie, and second, it also needed to be a good introduction to the new DC Cinematic Universe. Yeah, I know, technically this isn't the introduction to the DC Cinematic Universe. We already had that in the animated show Creature Commandos, but that's an animated streaming show. I don't think most people in the mainstream watched it or even knew about it. So, really, the Superman movie is the actual introduction to this new universe. So, first I want to talk about if I feel that this is a good Superman movie. For the most part, I'd say that yes, this was actually a great Superman movie, the best Superman movie we've had in a long time, far better than Man of Steel and Superman Returns. Those two movies are so serious and dour and depressed. This was for the first time since Christopher Reeve that we actually got a truly optimistic Superman. This movie had a positive, hopeful message, and Superman himself is portrayed as a wholesome, lovable, nice guy, far from the brooding Henry Cavill version. They also very effectively solved the very old problem of how do you make Superman relatable to modern audiences, something that they've been struggling with for ages now, it feels like, with every new movie the last 20 years. How do you make this all-powerful God relatable and likable and interesting and complex? Well, it turns out it's not really that hard. You just make him more human. And that's the whole core of this movie, that Clark Kent, while being an alien, is actually just as human as the rest of us. Like he himself so perfectly explained to Lex Luthor at the end. I cry, I get sad, I get happy, I get angry, or whatever he said. But along those lines. And turns out it's that easy. That's how you make Superman likable and relatable. Wow, who would have thought? So you don't make him into some depressing, brooding messiah figure. There are so many characters in this movie that a lot of people will probably say it's overstuffed like a Thanksgiving turkey. And yeah, maybe it might be, but to me personally it wasn't that big of a problem. But despite all these characters, funny, quirky, weird, colorful, bizarre characters running around, Superman to me stood out as the best one of them all. He was, to me, by far the best character in the movie, the most interesting and likable character in the movie. Now, I've always liked Superman, but I've never been a huge Superman fan. So for once, I actually really cared about Superman himself, the character. And that's of course due to both the writing and the acting by David Corenswet. This may be sacrilegious to say, but I actually like this Superman more than Christopher Reeve. If you're gonna pick one scene that perfectly captures this version of Superman, and I guess just Superman in general, or at least how he's supposed to be portrayed, is the scene where Lois Lane is giving him an interview in her apartment. That scene perfectly showcases just how good-natured he really is. And yes, a little naive. People are in danger, so he's gonna swoop in and save them. He's not gonna think about something more complicated like international politics. That's not really what Superman cares about. And of course, his evil arch-nemesis Lex Luthor knows that about him, so he's gonna just so perfectly use that against him. And this conflict between these two countries that we have in the movie makes this whole world feel a lot more real, and it's a very interesting spin on Superman. I'm pretty sure we've seen it before, I feel like we have, but maybe not too often. I think something similar came up in the old Justice League International comics. Like, if superheroes really exist, how does that work with the different countries, governments, international politics? What's the effect there? What's really gonna happen if Superman just swoops into some random country somewhere and stops a, say, civil war or whatever? What are the real world effects gonna be? Because the consequences of something like that are a little bit more complicated than what some Silver Age comic will portray it as. We have this grounded, realistic stuff in the movie, but then at the same time we also have all this zany comic booky stuff going on. I feel like the movie perfectly mixes both of these worlds, and this is something that James Gunn is really good at. He also did it very well in the Suicide Squad movie. I mean, it sounds kind of contradictory to say, but this is probably at the same time the most grounded, realistic Superman movie as it is the most over-the-top comic booky Superman movie. I mean, you have so many wacky stuff going on. You got the Justice Gang, you got a giant kaiju monster stomping around the city, you have pocket dimensions, Metamorpho, and of course a flying dog with a cape. But all of this stuff blends perfectly. Nothing feels out of place, like it doesn't fit. And that is a perfect segue into if I feel that this is a good start of the new DC Cinematic Universe. And I'd say, hell yeah it is. I think that this movie perfectly showcased what kind of stuff we can expect going forward. We can see both serious and grounded stuff and wacky Silver Agey comic booky stuff. Anything can fit into this world because so many different things already fit and do it well in this one movie. I mean, if you contrast that with the Man of Steel, which was so dour and tried so hard to be like the Christopher Nolan version of Superman by making everything so realistic. What if Superman existed in the real world right now? That was a very limiting approach if you're gonna create a new cinematic universe, which I'm not sure if they really were planning to when they were making Man of Steel. I think that's something they kind of came up with afterwards. But irregardless, it didn't really feel like a very rich and diverse world. I have a very hard time imagining these different DCEU movies existing in the same universe because they are so tonally different. But for this universe, I'm kinda ready for anything. This movie even had some pretty dark and disturbing stuff in it, like for example that scene where Lex Luthor plays Russian roulette with a guy in front of Superman. I mean, I think that's gotta be one of the most evil things we've ever seen Lex Luthor do. And I guess this is a pretty good segue into talking about how I felt about Lex Luthor in the movie. I am Mr. Rogues after all, I am the comic book villain channel. Well, just like how this take on Superman is perfect, I'd say that this take on Lex Luthor is also perfect. I mean, Gene Hackman is pretty fun, but he's not really Lex Luthor, and neither is Kevin Spacey. And Jesse Eisenberg is neither fun or Lex Luthor. But with this take, perfectly portrayed by Nicholas Hoult, we finally got what feels like actually Lex Luthor, a proper Lex Luthor in the movie that feels like he's ripped straight out of the comics. He's not into real estate for once. I don't know why in God's name the Gene Hackman version of Lex Luthor was so obsessed with real estate. He's not a poor man's Joker with zero motivations. For this take, they took the classic pre-crisis mad scientist Lex and combined it with the post-crisis corporate businessman Lex, which is how I think they do it in the modern comics anyway. He is the wealthy owner of LexCorp and pretty much the ruler of Metropolis, but also a brilliant scientist who invents all of this wacky stuff and uses it to fight Superman. He is also, like Lex Luthor is supposed to be, very petty and pathetic, with a giant and very vulnerable ego. Everything he does in the movie against Superman is just because he's jealous. He wants to be perceived as the hero, not this alien thing. This alien thing is a villain, it's bad. It's just so pathetic, so pathetic. And I love it at the end when Lex actually starts to cry when he loses and the world sees what he really is, that he's the villain and that Superman is the hero. The last thing that Lex wanted. What a great ending to wrap up Luthor's character and scheme in this movie. I can't wait to see where they go with him next. As for other characters in the movie, Lois Lane was great too. Maybe the best movie Lois. I've never really given Lois Lane that much thought since she's a civilian character and not a cool rogue or hero. Jimmy Olsen was a little silly in the movie. I don't understand why they portrayed him as a womanizer or whatever he was supposed to be. That didn't fit Jimmy, in my opinion. And Eve, Lex Luthor's sidekick, girlfriend, whatever she was, that Jimmy was romanticizing to get info on Luthor. That whole thing with her I thought was very ridiculous. I didn't really care much for her character. She felt very Christopher Reeve Superman, like she stepped right out of those movies, and that's probably what they were going for, an homage to that stuff. Which in turn I think is an homage to Adam West Batman. All the villains on that show always had a ditzy bimbo sidekick character for some reason, and they gave Lex one too in those old movies. I really liked the Justice Gang. Guy Gardner and Mr. Terrific were, well, terrific. Hawkgirl, she was okay, she was kinda just there, but it was fine for what it is. Maybe we'll see her more developed in a future project. With Guy Gardner, they made him very cocky and kinda douchebaggy, but they didn't go too far with it. He was still very likable, which is how he is normally portrayed in the comics, well, when they do him well. He's supposed to be a douchebag, but a likable douchebag. He was also very funny in the movie. And as for Mr. Terrific, he was also very funny. He had some great comedic stuff. And also very cool. Probably the coolest character in the movie. Guy and Terrific really makes me want to see more of the Justice Gang. And they could potentially turn this into some kind of Justice League International project. That would be great. Metamorpho, the Element Man, was very cool too. I really liked the design they went with for him. I mean, it's pretty much like it looks like in the comics. They made me want to see more of him too. I mean, we don't learn basically anything about him. He's just there. And for some reason, he has a baby named Joey, which I thought we were gonna see a lot more of because there's so much merchandise with this baby Joey character. But he's barely in the movie. And that's a small problem that this movie does have. Some stuff is just there with no real explanation for what it is and where it came from. In some cases it works, like with that little monster thing that then grows into a kaiju. That's fine. We don't need to know what exactly that was and where it came from and how Lex got it. But with something like Metamorpho and Baby Joey, it's kind of just, okay, this is there now and we don't really know what it is and what it's about. Even Supergirl just shows up at the end with no explanation how she survived the destruction of Krypton. And they never mention her earlier in the movie either. Stuff like that does feel like kind of typical MCU styled sequel tease. Like, here's some stuff you'll see more of in a future project. It didn't really bother me that much though while I was watching the movie. It didn't bog down the movie in any way. It's more just stuff you think about later after you're done with the movie and you reflect on it. Now, was the movie overstuffed, like a lot of people are saying? Too much going on? Too many different characters? Kinda, yeah, but it still works. Somehow it works for the most part. It didn't in any way make the movie less enjoyable. That's not to say that I enjoyed every single part of the movie. During the final battle of the movie, the big climax when Superman is fighting Ultraman and you have this whole rift thing, the pocket dimension about to destroy the whole world or whatever, I kind of zoned out a bit there, but that might just be a me problem because I always tend to do this with these superhero movies. Because it's always the same thing in all of them. At the end, you gotta have this big epic fight that goes on for too long. This big earth-shattering battle where the whole world is at stake and you got laser beams flying all over the place and people punching each other non-stop, and it's just it gets a little boring for me. And I mean, Superman and Ultraman, they sure punched each other for a long time, didn't they? It was pretty drawn out. And Ultraman as a character was also very boring. I didn't care much for him until sorta when they revealed that it's a clone of Clark. But it was too little and too late. Ultraman was pretty much a nothing character in the movie, just a plot device to have someone who is as strong and powerful as Superman so that Superman can fight somebody. And it seems like they always do this, or almost always do this in Superman movies. You gotta have a villain with the same powers like they did with General Zod in previous movies, so that you can have these two flying around and punching each other in the face. So it did kind of fall into the typical Superman movie trap there. I wish we could have a Superman movie where this doesn't happen. Can we skip that for the next one, please? Even though Ultraman was a boring character in this movie, I feel like there's places you can go with him in the future. Now that he's been unmasked and thrown into this pocket dimension, he could be portrayed as a very tragic character. I mean, he was created and used by Lex Luthor. I mean, what's really going on inside Ultraman's head? Does he even have his own free will? Does he now, maybe, now that he's been freed from Lex? You could do sort of a Winter Soldier thing with him, where he's a mind-controlled, so to speak, villain at first, and then becomes a more heroic character. So I really enjoyed this movie. I think it is a great Superman movie and a great start to the new DC cinematic universe. There are some things I didn't quite like though. They're not a deal breaker by any means, but I want to talk about them a little bit. Besides the drawn out final battle that is, which it's not really a problem with this movie. It might be a me problem because I feel this about every superhero movie. Even the Batman. I was like, really? They're gonna flood the whole city now? This was such a nice little noir detective story up until now. Why they gotta do this big stakes thing? Anyway, now there's a big thing that especially hardcore Superman fans don't like about this movie. I am of course talking about Superman's parents, his original parents, that is, biological parents, Jor-El and whatever the hell his mom's name is. Turns out that in this version they're actually evil, they're naughty. They didn't send Superman to save Earth really at all, to be his protector, no. It's a big twist in the movie that they actually send him to Earth to pretty much take over. So it's very much like Invincible with the Viltrumites and Omni-Man. Now naturally Superman isn't up for any of that. He's horrified when he learns the truth about this, about his real heritage. Some would say this is an interesting twist. That's obviously what James Gunn thought. But of course a lot of Superman fans will be completely against this, as this is not what Krypton is supposed to be like at all. And especially not Kal-El's biological parents. They're not supposed to be evil people. They're supposed to be noble, good-hearted. I mean, it's pretty much like making Thomas and Martha Wayne actually evil. Big twist, ooh. It works though in the context of this movie. I mean, this is an integral part of the movie. This is kind of what the whole thing hinges on. Superman is human. He's not an alien. Jor-El and What's-Her-Face are not his parents. Martha and Jonathan Kent are. They raised him. They gave him all of his values, not his Kryptonian parents. He don't even know his Kryptonian parents. He never even met them. He only knows his Earth parents. Of course, this kind of clashes with the immigrant allegory. So what is James Gunn saying, that all immigrants are actually evil? Well, I mean, no, because Clark is not evil. I mean, his parents, his Kryptonian parents, were definitely kind of shady. They want him to bang a bunch of women and create an army of supermen and rule the earth. Definitely some weird vibes going on there. But also, we don't know that this is all of Krypton. This is just specifically his parents. We don't really see anything else of Krypton anyway, so we can't quite tell what Krypton was really like in this version. Maybe we'll see more of that in the Supergirl movie, who knows. Yeah, just leave it to the sequels. Let's do damage control in a sequel, just like Snyder did with BVS. Nah, I'm kinda joking around here. I don't think they need to do that. I don't think they should do that either. So depending on how you look at it, I think this twist works for this movie, but it's not something that I want to see become mainstream. I mean, it's not gonna be anyway. One thing that both me and my wife thought was really silly in the movie was just how easy the whole world just turned on Superman, just like that. After Luthor releases the video of Clark's Kryptonian parents, their message, their evil message, why did people buy into that so easily? And how was this alien language even translated? It's an alien language. How do you translate that? And how can you be so sure that it's correctly translated? And to make that a big point in the movie too, they have several characters say it's definitely 100% correctly translated. It can't be wrong. Why? Why can't it be wrong? Why was it so easy to translate it? I mean, I get what James Gunn was going for with this commentary on social media and fake news and how people very easily buy into stuff they see in the media and on the internet. But it's very on the nose. Before I wrap up this video, I can't forget to mention crypto. I mean, that was just made for merchandising, and they probably have a lot of success with that. But he was cute. He was a cute, fun character in the movie. And I gotta say, probably the best CGI animal I've ever seen so far. He looked very real. He really looked like a real dog, but you could still tell that it was CGI. But yeah, definitely the realest CGI animal that we've gotten so far. Well, I should wrap up this video now. It's probably way too long and rambly. And well, am I coming back for good as a YouTuber now? Is Mr. Rogues back and here to stay? We'll see. I do have some plans for future videos, even a new series. And we'll just see what happens with that. I'll keep you all posted, of course. Just keep an eye on the community tab. I'll post any updates there. Yeah, it's getting kind of exciting to be a DC fan again. I feel like there's a lot of possibilities now with new movies and shows coming up. We might have something good going on here. We just might.